What did the human tell the immortal queen about her daughter? No one expected this. The stars stretched endlessly outside the viewport of the human ship, a glittering sea of cold light. Captain Elias Rowe sat quietly in the command chair, his hands resting on the controls, though the ship needed little guidance to reach its destination. The Surin Dominion's capital planet, Valor Prime, was massive, its surface shining with artificial structures that gleamed like silver under the distant sun. Elias had traveled to many worlds in his life, but none so intimidating as this one. The Surins had ruled the galaxy for centuries, their immortal queen considered untouchable, and their princess, missing for months, was the center of a mystery that could decide the fate of countless civilizations. Elias checked the coordinates one last time. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing on him, the silent expectations of the countless humans watching from afar, hoping their ambassador would return with news. It was not simply a mission. It was a gamble, and he was the only one walking this thin line between diplomacy and disaster. The ship descended through the upper atmosphere with the precision of a well-oiled machine, its hull reflecting the light of the twin suns above. As the vessel entered the city's orbit, vast towers stretched upward like jagged teeth, connected by beams of light that pulsed faintly. Elias had read the reports, studied every map and historical document, but no preparation could match the reality. Valor Prime was a monument to control, a demonstration of power. The Surins had the entire galaxy at their command, and every corner of their capital whispered authority. A soft chime signaled their arrival at the landing platform. The docking clamps engaged, and the hum of the ship faded into silence. Elias took a deep breath. His reputation as a diplomat and strategist was strong, but it would be tested here. He adjusted the strap of his insignia, the symbol of humanity, on his chest. He stepped out of the ship, greeted by a wave of perfectly trained Surin guards. Their movements were precise, almost unnatural, their faces a mix of beauty and alien perfection. The air smelled faintly metallic, carrying a sense of sterile authority. A single figure approached from the shadows of the platform, cloaked in silver and black, her steps slow and deliberate. She was tall, her features sharp, with skin that shimmered faintly under the artificial lights. The human's heart beat faster. This was not the princess, but the escort assigned by the queen herself, a silent warning to all who dared step too confidently into her domain. "You are Elias Rowe, human captain," the figure said, her voice smooth, with a tone that demanded obedience yet carried curiosity. "The queen awaits you. Speak freely, but misstep and your life is forfeit." Elias inclined his head. "Understood. I will respect your guidance." He followed her through the sprawling corridors of the palace, each step echoing off walls of polished alloy. The halls were wide enough for several beings to walk side by side, yet entirely empty. The Surins valued both space and silence, each designed to project power and control. Everywhere he looked, he saw tapestries depicting battles, treaties, and conquests from centuries past. In every image, the Surins emerged victorious, flawless, immortal. It was intimidating, yet Elias reminded himself that the humans had survived against odds far greater than mere conquest. Finally, they reached the throne room. Its entrance was massive, carved from a single crystal that refracted the light into shifting colors. The human paused, taking in the grandeur. Beyond the archway, the queen waited. She sat atop a throne that rose like a spire from the floor, her posture regal, her expression unreadable. Around her, advisors and guards observed, their gazes sharp and calculating. Not a single human had ever dared enter this room and leave unchanged. The queen rose as Elias approached. Her movements were deliberate, almost ritualistic, and her presence alone seemed to bend the room around her. "Captain Rowe," she said, her voice carrying centuries of authority, "you come seeking an audience concerning my daughter. Speak. What news do you bring?" Elias bowed slightly, mindful of every motion. Your Majesty, I have traveled across systems to offer insight from the border worlds. I have no concrete knowledge of your daughter's current location, but I have gathered information from those who encountered her during her travels. The Queen's eyes narrowed, piercing into him with an intensity that made the human's stomach tighten. Insight. Do you mean rumors? Lies? Humans are known for their exaggerations. Make your words count. Elias nodded. I understand. What I offer is perspective, not conjecture. Your daughter, Princess Leora, has quietly aided oppressed populations in several systems. She has intervened in conflicts where your advisors would have left others to suffer. Though small in scale, her actions have created hope among those who had none. She is not reckless or irresponsible, Your Majesty. She is courageous in ways the galaxy rarely sees. A ripple passed through the court. The advisors exchanged worried glances, some leaning forward, whispering in low tones. The Queen's gaze hardened, yet a flicker of something unreadable passed over her features, curiosity perhaps, or the faintest hint of pride. Courageous, she repeated, her voice softer, almost disbelieving. Do you claim to know my daughter better than those who serve at my side, those who have observed her for centuries? I do not claim knowledge beyond what I have seen, Elias said steadily. But perspective can reveal truths that proximity may hide. Princess Leora is not only acting for personal interest. She is shaping the galaxy in subtle ways that others overlook. She inspires, she protects, and she makes decisions that create lasting change. These qualities are rare, even among the immortals. The room fell silent. The only sound was the faint hum of the palace's energy conduits. The Queen's advisors shifted uneasily, sensing a human challenging centuries of judgment, not with force but with words. The Queen leaned forward slightly, studying Elias. And you suggest I trust a human's view of my daughter? I suggest that your daughter's actions may be understood differently when seen without the weight of centuries of protocol, Elias replied. Sometimes, the value of courage and compassion can be recognized only by those who are not bound by tradition. Humanity has survived against impossible odds, not because of titles or power, but because of insight, ingenuity, and persistence. Princess Leora shows these same qualities. For a moment, the Queen said nothing. Her eyes softened, though the strength of her presence remained. Then, unexpectedly, a small movement at the edge of the room caught Elias' attention. Princess Leora herself had entered the hall, silent and almost ethereal. She observed the human with a tilt of her head, her expression unreadable, yet her eyes held a spark of curiosity. The advisors stiffened. It was rare for the princess to appear without explicit summons. Some whispered that this alone could be seen as insubordination, but the Queen did not intervene. Instead, she gestured for Leora to stay. You have seen her, the Queen said, her tone both a challenge and an invitation. What do you think, human? Do you truly believe she is worthy of independence? Elias did not flinch. He met the gaze of the young princess and then turned to the Queen. I believe she is capable of more than even you might imagine. Not in the sense of rebellion, but in the sense of leadership that inspires others to act rightly. She has the power to effect change, to protect countless lives, and to prove that wisdom and courage do not always follow the path of tradition. Leora's lips curved faintly, almost imperceptibly, and she stepped forward. Her presence was calm but commanding, and for the first time, Elias realized that she was not just a child of the Surin line, she was something more, something that could bridge worlds. The Queen studied her daughter, her expression unreadable. Then she turned back to Elias. You speak with conviction, human, but words are only half of action. How can I be certain your insight is true and not a clever attempt to manipulate the court? Elias' mind raced, but he remained composed. Your Majesty, if I were here to manipulate, I would not have spoken of hope, courage, or your daughter's unseen deeds. I would have flattered, threatened, or deceived. My goal is not to challenge your authority, but to provide a perspective that may have been overlooked. I offer truth, even if it is uncomfortable, because the consequences of ignoring it could affect the galaxy itself. The queen remained silent, her gaze shifting between Elias and her daughter. The tension in the room was almost tangible. Then slowly the queen nodded, just enough to acknowledge the human's words. "You may see her alone," she said, surprising everyone. "But remember, Captain Rowe, you are not here for yourself. You carry the future of diplomacy in your hands. Do not waste this opportunity." Elias inclined his head respectfully. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I will not fail." As he followed the princess out of the throne room, he could feel the weight of every gaze upon him. The corridor outside felt almost warmer, less sterile, and Leora finally spoke. Her voice was soft, tinged with amusement. "You are different from the others," she said. "Most humans would be trembling in a palace like this." Elias allowed himself a small smile. "Perhaps, but humans are used to facing impossible odds. We find ways to survive." Leora studied him for a moment, then nodded thoughtfully. "I wonder if surviving is enough, or if we must also leave something meaningful behind." The human considered her words carefully. "Surviving is the first step. What comes after depends on courage, insight, and the choices we make when no one is watching." They walked in silence, the palace corridors stretching before them like an endless labyrinth. Yet in that silence, Elias could sense the quiet beginnings of something extraordinary. The princess was not just a royal heir, she was a spark, a force that could ignite change if guided correctly. As they reached a small, secluded garden within the palace, Leora stopped. The artificial sunlight of the dome above fell softly on her face, and Elias felt an odd sense of calm amidst the tension. "You speak as if you know me," she said quietly. "But how could a human know the mind of a Surin princess?" "I do not claim to know you completely," Elias replied. "But sometimes, a fresh perspective reveals truths that even centuries of observation cannot. You have acted with kindness and bravery that most would never attempt. That is visible to anyone willing to see it." Leora's eyes held a glimmer of something rare: trust. "Perhaps you are right," she whispered. "Perhaps there is more to this galaxy than rules, power, and fear." Elias nodded. "There is always more, and sometimes the smallest actions ripple farther than the mightiest fleets." The garden was quiet, the distant hum of the palace fading. For the first time, the human and the immortal princess shared a moment of understanding. Neither needed to speak further. Their paths were intertwined, and the choices made here could shape the course of countless worlds. And somewhere in the heart of the throne room, the queen watched silently, considering a truth she had never fully acknowledged: that her daughter might be more than a royal heir. She might be a force that could change the galaxy, and that a human had just helped her see it. The quiet garden of the palace was a stark contrast to the grandeur of the throne room. Artificial sunlight spilled over meticulously designed plants, their leaves shimmering with faint bioluminescence. Elias Rowe walked beside Princess Leora, taking care to match his pace to hers. She was quiet, thoughtful, but her eyes never stopped observing. There was an intelligence in them that made him pause now and then, a kind of awareness that humans often lacked even after years of experience. "You speak boldly in the Queen's presence," Leora said softly, her voice carrying no accusation, only curiosity. "Most humans would tremble, some would even lie to survive." Elias shook his head. "I have learned that honesty, carefully delivered, can sometimes be more powerful than deception, especially when the truth is difficult to hear." Leora studied him. "You think the Queen will listen to a human?" "I don't know," Elias admitted. "But humans are good at doing what others think impossible. I've seen entire colonies survive against odds no one believed they could overcome. Maybe your people underestimate that." The princess smiled faintly, a gesture that was almost alien in its subtlety. "Perhaps you are right. Humans do have resilience, but I have to wonder if it is the same kind of strength that matters in this palace. Power here is measured in centuries, not moments. Elias considered this as they walked along a path lined with silver trees, their leaves reflecting colors that did not exist on Earth. Strength is not only measured by years or fleets, he said. It is measured by the choices we make when no one else is watching. By courage, by the way we act for those who cannot protect themselves. I have learned that courage can ripple farther than the mightiest armada. Leora's gaze drifted to a fountain at the center of the garden, where water flowed upward instead of down, defying gravity in a manner that reminded Elias of the ingenuity of alien technology. "Your words are strange," she said, "yet they make sense. Perhaps I have been too careful, too bound by the rules of the court, and perhaps you are right, small actions can indeed have great effects." Elias nodded. "I have seen humans survive impossible situations because they act when others hesitate. The galaxy may fear your kind for your power, but I have learned that fear alone does not create respect. Actions create respect, and your actions have already changed lives, even if the court does not recognize it." Leora's eyes widened slightly. "Do you truly believe that? That my deeds, small as they seem, can be seen from afar?" "I do," he said. "Even the smallest gesture, like helping one world in secret, can inspire thousands. Your compassion and judgment can influence more than armies ever could." The princess was silent for a moment, her thoughts turning inward. Elias knew the court had molded her for centuries, taught her that decisions must follow protocol, and that deviation could be punished severely. Yet he also saw in her a spark, a willingness to challenge expectations quietly. "I have tried to act rightly," Leora whispered, "but sometimes the right choice feels like defiance. The court sees it as weakness or insolence." "Defiance is not weakness," Elias said firmly. "It is the courage to act according to your principles, even when the world expects obedience. Humanity has survived by defiance, by challenging what seemed absolute and daring to do what others would not." Leora looked at him with curiosity. "Your people are different from my advisors," she said. "They would not risk themselves to speak truth to power." "We take risks because we have no choice," Elias replied. "We have no centuries of invincibility, no armies to shield us from consequences. When humans see a threat or injustice, we act. Sometimes we fail, sometimes we succeed, but we learn from every outcome, and I think you have the same gift." The garden was silent except for the gentle hum of the water fountain and the faint rustle of alien foliage. Leora's expression softened, and for the first time, Elias sensed her curiosity outweighing her caution. She leaned against the railing, staring at the shimmering horizon beyond the palace walls. "You speak as if you have known me for years," she said. "But you have only just arrived. I have studied much about your kind, and I have observed humans for longer than you might imagine," Elias replied. "Perspective can be gained quickly if one is willing to see clearly. I see you not as a princess confined by expectation, but as someone who can change the course of worlds." Leora's lips curved slightly in a smile, faint but genuine, and if my mother hears such words, she might see them as insolence. "Perhaps," Elias said. "But the queen listens carefully when someone speaks with clarity and courage. I have seen it before. Even the strongest rulers are capable of reflection when shown a perspective they did not expect." The princess turned toward him, her eyes gleaming with quiet determination. "Do you truly believe that a human can influence the mind of an immortal queen?" "I do not just believe it," Elias said. "I know it. Humans are underestimated across the galaxy, often dismissed as fragile or insignificant. Yet we have survived against civilizations far stronger than our own. Perspective, courage, and insight can sway decisions even in the most powerful courts. I have learned that from experience." Leora studied him, her expression thoughtful. "You are unlike any human I have encountered," she said. Most are timid, afraid, or blinded by fear. You speak boldly yet with respect. Perhaps you understand something my court has forgotten. Elias inclined his head. Perhaps I do. Or perhaps I simply see what you are capable of. You have acted in ways that challenge the status quo, in ways that matter. That is what I recognize. The princess looked out over the garden once more, her hands resting lightly on the railing. I have always wanted to help, but I feared the court's reaction. I did not know if my choices mattered beyond the walls of this palace. They do, Elias said simply. Every act of courage, every choice made with integrity, has effects that ripple outward. Sometimes slowly, sometimes unexpectedly, but they matter. Your actions have already saved lives, inspired hope, and created change. Even the court may not yet see it, but the galaxy does. Leora's eyes widened slightly, as though a weight she had carried for centuries had begun to lift. "You make it sound so simple," she said, though her voice betrayed her wonder. "But change seems dangerous. It could anger my mother, anger the court, even put lives at risk." "Change is never without risk," Elias said, "but the greater risk is in inaction. To watch injustice or suffering and do nothing is far more dangerous. Humans have learned to act even when the odds are impossible. Sometimes that is the only way to survive and to thrive." The princess nodded slowly, absorbing his words. "You speak with such certainty, yet I do not fully understand your people. How can one so fragile, so short-lived compared to my kind, possess such courage?" "Courage is not measured by lifespan," Elias said. "It is measured by choice. Humans understand mortality. We know every decision carries weight because time is limited. You, princess, have the advantage of longevity, yet you also have the challenge of expectation. You must decide how to act despite centuries of pressure. That requires courage as well, perhaps more than most can imagine." Leora's gaze softened, and for a moment the distant hum of the palace seemed distant and insignificant. "Perhaps I have underestimated the power of perspective," she whispered. "Perhaps there is more to this galaxy than protocol, rules, and fear." Elias smiled faintly. "There always is. The galaxy is shaped by those who act, not those who wait for permission. I have seen it in humans, in aliens, and now, perhaps, in you as well." They walked in silence for several minutes, the quiet of the garden giving space for thought. The princess's mind worked rapidly, considering the implications of Elias' words. She had always known she wanted to help others, but the weight of centuries of courtly expectation had kept her cautious, careful, restrained. Now she felt the stirrings of possibility, the notion that her actions could extend beyond the palace, beyond the council, and reach those who truly needed her. "You speak as if you expect me to take action immediately," she said at last, her tone half amusement, half seriousness. "But the court, they are powerful, and my mother watches constantly." "Actions do not need to be grand to be meaningful," Elias said. "Even small acts can ripple outward. You can begin quietly, subtly, without drawing attention at first, but the impact will grow. Courage often starts as a whisper before it becomes a storm." Leora's expression softened. "A whisper, yes. Perhaps I can start there. Perhaps I can make a difference without defying the court outright. But it will take a strategy, observation, and trust." "You have all of that," Elias said, "and more. Humans are accustomed to adversity, and so are you, princess. You have the strength of your lineage, yes, but also the insight to act wisely. That combination is rare. Trust yourself, and the rest will follow." The princess took a deep breath, feeling the weight of centuries of expectation press lightly upon her shoulders, yet no longer suffocating. Elias' words had shifted something inside her, a quiet understanding that courage and compassion could coexist with her duties, and that the smallest choices could indeed influence the galaxy. "I will consider your counsel carefully," she said softly. "Perhaps your perspective has given me more clarity than any counsel or advisor ever could." Elias nodded. "Sometimes Clarity comes from an outsider, someone unbound by centuries of tradition. Humanity has learned to survive because we observe, adapt, and act when others hesitate. You have the same potential, Princess. I have no doubt. Leora's eyes held a faint smile, a mixture of wonder and determination. Then we will see if your words bear fruit. Perhaps the galaxy is ready for change, even if the court is not. Elias allowed himself a small smile. The beginning had been cautious, respectful, and careful. But in that moment, he sensed the spark of possibility, the quiet start of a ripple that could spread far beyond the palace walls, far beyond the reach of even the immortal queen. And he knew that the path ahead, while uncertain, held potential for something extraordinary. The human and the princess walked on, side by side, through the quiet garden, each step carrying the weight of centuries and the hope of countless lives. And in that silence, a plan was forming, one built on courage, insight, and the subtle, unstoppable influence of one human who saw the truth about an immortal princess. The palace was quieter than usual that evening, the halls illuminated by soft, pulsing lights that gave the alien architecture an almost ethereal glow. Elias Rowe walked beside Princess Leora, his steps careful yet confident. The Surin court watched them with silent suspicion, whispering among themselves. For centuries, humans had been considered weak, fragile, and unworthy of serious counsel. Elias knew he had already upset that perception simply by speaking boldly in the queen's presence. They entered a corridor that led to the palace's inner garden, a place few were allowed to see. The air here was warmer, scented faintly with the alien flora carefully engineered to survive under artificial conditions. Leora's eyes moved over the garden, reflecting both the beauty and the precision of its design. It was a place for thought and reflection, far removed from the constant scrutiny of the court. "You have been teaching me about courage, about perspective," Leora said quietly, her voice barely audible over the soft hum of the garden. "But how does one act when every move is watched, every decision judged?" Elias glanced at her, his expression calm but serious. "Courage is not the absence of observation, Princess. It is the decision to act rightly, even when the world watches. You have the advantage of knowing what is just. The trick is to act in ways that are subtle, intelligent, and effective." Leora nodded thoughtfully. "Subtlety, I understand, but it still feels dangerous. One misstep could ruin everything, even put lives at risk." "That is always the risk with action," Elias said. "Humans take risks every day. We survive not because we are stronger than others, but because we are willing to act when necessary. And sometimes, one small choice can change the course of countless lives." They walked together through the winding paths, the light reflecting off the silver leaves of the alien trees. Leora's expression was contemplative, her mind working through the possibilities. Elias knew that the princess had always felt constrained by the rules of her court, but now her thoughts were beginning to shift. She was considering action, not just observation. "There is a settlement on the edge of the outer territories," Elias continued. "It is under constant pressure from raiders. The Surin military believes it is insignificant, not worth defending, but the people there are struggling to survive. A small act of leadership, providing aid, offering protection, could save lives and build loyalty that the court may not recognize." Leora's eyes widened slightly. "You suggest I intervene quietly without the court knowing?" "Yes," Elias said. "Start small. Make a difference where it matters most. Observe the effects. Learn how your actions ripple outward. That is how influence begins, quietly, intelligently, and with purpose." Leora looked down at her hands, considering the advice. "It feels revolutionary, even dangerous. But perhaps it is necessary. If I do nothing, the people suffer. And if I act wisely, perhaps I can inspire change without causing chaos." Elias nodded. "Precisely. Leadership is not about rules or fear. It is about responsibility, courage, and insight. And you have all of those qualities. You just need to trust them and yourself. They reached a secluded bench near a small pond, where bioluminescent plants glowed softly in the dim light. Leora sat, her posture straight but relaxed, and Elias followed, taking a seat beside her. The quiet of the garden allowed for reflection, and Elias could see the wheels turning in her mind. "You speak as if the queen could be persuaded to trust me," Leora said, her voice low. "But she has ruled for centuries. She is powerful, wise, and cautious. How could a human influence her decisions?" Elias leaned back, thoughtful. "Influence comes not from strength or fear, but from perspective. Humans have survived by seeing differently, by noticing what others overlook. Sometimes a new perspective can reveal truths even the most powerful rulers miss. Your mother respects insight and courage, even if she would never admit it openly. If she sees that your actions are guided by wisdom, not impulse, she will allow it." Leora considered his words. "I have always acted within the rules, following tradition, observing protocol. But perhaps there is more to leadership than that. Perhaps true power lies in doing what is right, even when it defies expectation." "Yes," Elias said, his voice firm. "And you have already shown that power. The quiet deeds you have done, helping those in need, protecting the innocent, have not gone unnoticed. The galaxy whispers about them, even if the court does not. Imagine what could happen if you acted openly, yet wisely." Leora's eyes gleamed with determination. "You make it sound so simple, yet it is terrifying. I do not know if I am ready to challenge centuries of expectation." "You are more ready than you know," Elias said. "Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to act despite it. The galaxy needs leaders who can make difficult choices, who can act with both wisdom and compassion. That is what sets humans apart, and that is what you can do." The princess leaned back, staring at the glowing pond. She thought of the settlement Elias had mentioned, the people struggling, the raiders who had no mercy. She imagined sending aid quietly, arranging protection, and seeing the effects of her actions spread outward. The thought was both frightening and exhilarating. "You speak as if humans are fearless," Leora said softly, almost to herself. "But you are cautious, observant. You calculate risks, yet you act decisively when needed." "That is what survival teaches us," Elias said. "We do not have centuries of invincibility. We do not have armies that span galaxies. We have to act with wisdom and courage because inaction often leads to destruction. And sometimes, the smallest decision can change everything." Leora turned to him, her eyes bright. "Then perhaps it is time. Time to act quietly, to test my own courage, to see if my choices can truly matter beyond these walls." Elias smiled faintly. "Exactly. Start small, learn from each action, and let your influence grow naturally. The court will notice eventually, but by then your actions will speak louder than words." The princess nodded, a newfound resolve settling over her. "I will do it," she said. "I will find a way to help those who cannot protect themselves, and I will do it wisely as you advise." Elias inclined his head. "Good, that is the first step. And remember, courage is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet, subtle, and persistent, but it is always powerful." They rose from the bench, walking along the paths as the artificial sunlight dimmed, signaling the transition to night. The garden was serene, yet Elias could feel the weight of what had just begun. This was not merely advice. It was a challenge, a test of courage, and a seed that could grow into something extraordinary. As they returned toward the main palace, the court's eyes followed them. Whispers spread among the advisors, some skeptical, some intrigued. A human influencing the princess of the Surin dominion was unprecedented, and the ripple of change had already begun. In her private chambers that night, Leora reflected on Elias' words. She thought of the settlement, of the lives that could be saved, and of the quiet power of small, intelligent action. For the first time in centuries, She felt a sense of purpose that was entirely her own. She was not acting out of fear, protocol, or expectation. She was acting out of courage, insight, and the desire to make a meaningful difference. Elias, meanwhile, returned to his quarters, reviewing the information he had gathered about the outer territories. He considered strategies, potential obstacles, and the subtle ways the princess could act without immediate detection. The task was delicate, requiring intelligence, patience, and courage, but he was confident that the princess possessed all three. The next morning, Leora summoned her trusted aides under the guise of routine inspection. Yet she gave them subtle instructions, quietly adjusting resources to provide aid to the settlement Elias had mentioned. She monitored the situation carefully, ensuring that every action was discreet, yet effective. The ripple of her influence began, small but deliberate, touching lives that would eventually spread the story across systems. In the palace, whispers grew louder. Some advisors noticed subtle changes, questioning why the princess had shifted her approach. Others observed the impact without understanding its source. And somewhere in the throne room, the queen watched, sensing that a transformation was underway, though she did not yet realize the extent of it. Elias continued to counsel her, offering guidance when needed and encouraging her to trust her instincts. Each day, the princess grew more confident, more willing to act, and more aware of the quiet but immense power she wielded. The human's perspective had unlocked a potential within her that even centuries of training had not revealed. By the end of the week, the settlement reported unexpected aid and protection, enough to repel the raiders temporarily. Word spread quietly across the outer territories, tales of a mysterious figure bringing hope and safety. The ripple of change had begun, subtle yet undeniable. And in the palace, Leora stood on her balcony, watching the stars. For the first time, she understood the human's words fully. Courage was not measured by fearlessness, but by action. And sometimes, the smallest, most discreet actions could alter the course of the galaxy. Elias joined her, his presence calm and reassuring. "You see the effects of your choices," he said softly. "Even the smallest ones can grow beyond what we imagine." Leora nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I see it now, and I understand why you spoke so boldly to my mother. The galaxy is ready for change, and so am I." The human and the princess stood side by side, looking out over the palace and the stars beyond, knowing that this was only the beginning. The quiet garden conversations, the subtle actions, and the human's insight had set something in motion that could reshape the future. And for the first time in centuries, the princess felt truly empowered to act, not just as an heir, but as a force capable of influencing the galaxy for the better. The court, unaware of the subtle revolution unfolding, continued its routines, oblivious to the quiet courage and insight that had begun to spread from the palace garden to the farthest reaches of the Dominion. And Elias knew that, with patience, intelligence, and trust, the ripple they had begun would grow until the galaxy could no longer ignore the impact of one human and one princess acting together. The night passed quietly, yet change had begun. The story of the princess, guided by a human's perspective, had only just begun. And in the quiet of the palace, the seeds of hope and courage were taking root, ready to grow into a force that could shape the future in ways no one, not even the immortal queen, could have anticipated. The palace was alive with whispers, tension rippling through the corridors. Like an invisible current, Princess Leora's subtle actions in the outer territories had begun to produce effects, small at first, but unmistakable to those paying attention. Rumors of aid reaching struggling settlements, of raiders being quietly repelled, were spreading faster than the court had anticipated. The advisors grew uneasy, their whispered conversations tinged with suspicion and frustration. How could the princess act so decisively, yet so discreetly, without their knowledge? Captain Elias Rowe walked beside Leora through the central halls, their pace measured and calm, though each step carried the weight of decisions that could alter the galaxy. The human had learned to navigate dangerous courts before, but the Surin dominion was different. Every corner held observation points, every shadow could conceal a watcher. Yet Elias moved with confidence, knowing that their careful planning and the subtlety of Leora's actions had already given them an advantage. "You are changing more than just the outer territories," Elias said quietly. "Your influence has begun to spread. People notice even the smallest shifts, and whispers carry further than the loudest proclamations." Leora's eyes reflected determination. "I never imagined my choices could matter beyond the palace walls, yet now I see the potential and the responsibility." "The responsibility is yours alone," Elias said. "Your mother will notice eventually, the court may resist, but true leadership is not about pleasing everyone, it is about acting wisely, even when faced with opposition." The princess nodded. "I understand, and I feel capable. Perhaps for the first time I am not merely a figurehead but someone who can make a real difference." Their conversation was interrupted as the Queen's personal herald approached, bowing low. "Your Highness, your Majesty requests your presence in the throne room. Immediately." Leora's heart beat faster, but she did not falter. She glanced at Elias, who gave a subtle nod. Together, they walked toward the throne room where the Queen awaited. The tension was palpable, the advisors stiffened, sensing that something extraordinary was unfolding. As they entered, the Queen's gaze settled on Leora, her expression a mixture of curiosity, pride, and caution. "Princess," she said, her voice carrying centuries of authority, "your actions have not gone unnoticed. I am aware that changes are occurring in the outer territories. You have acted without the Council's approval. Speak and explain your reasoning." Leora met her mother's gaze, steady and unwavering. "Mother, the people in those territories are suffering. Raiders attack them constantly, and your advisors deem them insignificant. I could not stand by and do nothing. I acted quietly, providing aid and protection to save lives and bring stability." A hush fell over the court. The advisors exchanged anxious glances, some leaning forward, whispering heatedly. The Queen studied her daughter, weighing each word carefully. Elias remained silent, observing, knowing that the moment of revelation was delicate. "And you did this knowing it would defy the expectations of your court?" the Queen asked, her tone measured, yet carrying a hint of admiration. "Yes, Mother," Leora replied. "I acted because it was right, not because it was safe or expected. The galaxy is watching and we have the power to make a difference. I could not ignore that responsibility." The Queen's expression softened, though her eyes remained sharp. "You show courage, Princess, and insight beyond your years. Yet do you understand the risks you have taken? The court may see your actions as rebellion. Allies may turn suspicious. Even humans who you seem to admire would hesitate under such scrutiny." Elias stepped forward, speaking with calm authority. "Your Majesty, if I may, Princess Leora's actions demonstrate wisdom and foresight, qualities that are rare even among the immortal Surin. She has acted with intelligence and caution, yet with courage that inspires change. The settlements she aided now prosper, not because of force, but because of her subtle guidance and decisive choices." The Queen's eyes narrowed as she regarded the human. "You speak boldly, Captain Rowe. Do you presume to advise me on the actions of my daughter?" "I do not presume, Your Majesty," Elias said steadily. "I observe, and I speak the truth. Princess Leora has demonstrated qualities that even the court may not yet recognize: courage, insight, and the ability to act where others hesitate. These are the qualities that shape the future even of empires." The room was silent, the tension thick and almost tangible. The advisors leaned forward, some with disbelief, others with apprehension. The Queen remained composed, though the flicker of emotion in her eyes betrayed her internal struggle. She had ruled for centuries, guided by wisdom and caution, Yet the human's words struck a chord she could not ignore. "Courage and insight," the queen said slowly, her voice carrying weight. "You claim that my daughter possesses these qualities, and yet she acted without my explicit command. How can I reconcile this with tradition, with centuries of protocol?" "Tradition guides, but it does not define," Elias replied. "Leadership is not measured by obedience alone. It is measured by the ability to act rightly, to protect those who cannot protect themselves, and to influence change wisely. Princess Leora has done all of these quietly and effectively. That is true leadership." The queen studied her daughter again, noting the calm confidence in Leora's stance. She realized that her daughter's courage was not reckless. It was measured, intentional, and thoughtful. For the first time, she began to see Leora not merely as an heir, but as someone capable of shaping the future of the Dominion. "Perhaps," the queen said softly, "there is more to leadership than I have acknowledged. Perhaps courage is not only about obedience and power, but also about acting for what is right, even when it defies expectation." Leora's eyes brightened slightly. "Yes, mother, I do not seek to challenge the throne or the council. I only seek to act where action is needed, to guide those who cannot protect themselves, and to make choices that create lasting impact." The queen's gaze shifted to Elias. "And you, human, believe that your perspective is valuable in shaping the understanding of my daughter." "I do, your majesty," Elias said. "Humans survive by observation, insight, and action. We learn to act where others hesitate. That perspective, combined with Princess Leora's wisdom and courage, can guide decisions that benefit the galaxy. The ripple of her actions is already felt, and it will grow." The advisors shifted uneasily. Some whispered, concerned that the human was influencing the queen and the princess. Others considered the possibility that his insight was accurate, that a new form of leadership might be emerging, one that combined courage, intelligence, and subtlety. The queen remained silent for a moment, reflecting. The weight of centuries of rule pressed upon her, yet she recognized a truth she had rarely allowed herself to see. Her daughter's potential exceeded her expectations. Leora had acted wisely, decisively, and with courage, qualities that could transform not only the outer territories but the entire Dominion. "You have spoken well, human," the queen said finally, her voice carrying both authority and acknowledgement. "And you, princess, have demonstrated a capacity for leadership that cannot be ignored. I will not punish you for your actions, but I will observe closely. You may continue to act, but with caution, intelligence, and respect for the delicate balance of the court." Leora bowed deeply, her expression composed. "Thank you, mother. I will act with wisdom and care, guided by the principles you have instilled and the insight I have gained." The queen's eyes softened, a rare smile touching her lips. "Perhaps it is time for the Dominion to learn that leadership is not only inherited, but also earned through courage and insight. I will allow you, princess, to explore this path under my watchful gaze." Elias felt a surge of relief. The queen's decision was monumental. By acknowledging Leora's potential and allowing her to act, the path for subtle, intelligent change had been opened. The ripple that had begun in the outer territories could now expand, guided by both human insight and the princess's courage. As the throne room emptied, the advisors returning to their chambers with whispers of speculation and concern, Elias and Leora remained briefly, absorbing the significance of the moment. "You see, princess," Elias said quietly, "courage combined with wisdom can influence even the most powerful. The ripple of change has begun, and it will grow steadily." Leora's gaze was steady, her determination clear. "I understand now. Leadership is not about waiting for permission. It is about seeing where action is needed and acting wisely. I will not waste this opportunity." The following days were a delicate dance. Leora continued to provide aid to the outer territories, her actions quiet yet effective. She coordinated resources, ensured protection against raiders, and monitored the well-being of the people, all while maintaining the appearance of compliance within the court. Each decision was calculated, informed by Elia's guidance and her own growing understanding of leadership. The ripple of her influence spread further than she expected. Local leaders, initially wary, began to follow her subtle guidance, impressed by the quiet effectiveness of her interventions. Word of her deeds reached the farthest reaches of the outer territories, inspiring hope and loyalty among those who had long been neglected. In the palace, the queen observed these developments closely. She noted the growing respect and admiration for her daughter, and while some advisors expressed concern, the queen understood the significance of Leora's actions. The princess was learning to wield power with wisdom, courage, and insight, qualities that could reshape the dominion itself. Elias remained at her side, offering counsel, perspective, and encouragement. Each day, Leora grew more confident in her abilities, more aware of the impact of her choices, and more determined to act wisely for the greater good. The bond between human and princess, built on trust and understanding, became a quiet yet powerful force within the palace. And as the sun set over Valor Prime, casting long shadows across the silver towers, Elias and Leora stood together on the balcony, looking out at the galaxy beyond. The ripple of change had begun, subtle yet unstoppable, and the path ahead, though uncertain, was full of possibility. For the first time, the princess felt not only empowered but also inspired to lead, guided by the quiet insight of a human who had shown her that courage, wisdom, and action could shape the future. And somewhere within the palace, the immortal queen acknowledged silently that her daughter, with human guidance, was beginning to discover the true power of leadership. The outer territories had changed in ways the court could no longer ignore. Villages that had once been abandoned were thriving again. Raiders who had terrorized local populations had vanished, deterred by the quiet yet effective strategies orchestrated by Princess Leora and guided by Captain Elias Rowe. Word spread faster than the palace anticipated. Traders, travelers, and officials whispered tales of mysterious aid, arriving exactly when it was most needed. Some credited the princess directly, others remained uncertain who was behind the change, but everyone agreed that the Dominion's influence had become tangible in ways previously unimaginable. In the palace, tension ran high. Advisors scurried from chamber to chamber, debating, arguing, and questioning each other. Some saw the changes as miraculous, evidence of a new era of leadership. Others feared it was a dangerous precedent, that the princess was stepping beyond her expected role. Yet no one could deny the impact. The queen herself observed quietly, her centuries of wisdom telling her that something extraordinary was unfolding before her eyes. Elias walked through the throne room alongside Leora, who had grown more confident with each passing day. She had learned the delicate balance of subtle action and decisive strategy. Every move she made was calculated, measured, and guided by empathy. Elias knew she had transformed from a cautious princess into a leader whose actions could ripple across the galaxy. "Do you feel it?" Elias asked quietly. "The change you've created, the ripple has become a wave." Leora glanced toward the horizon visible from the palace's highest balcony. "I feel it," she said softly. "I can see the lives being saved, the hope returning to places that had none. And I know that it will not stop here. There is more to do, and I must act carefully, wisely, and courageously." "That is exactly what leadership requires," Elias said. "You have grown faster than most could imagine, and yet you still have the insight to act with humility and precision. That is rare among rulers, no matter the species." Her eyes met his, a mixture of gratitude and determination in their depths. "I could not have done this without your guidance, Captain. You have shown me a perspective I never considered. I now understand the true weight of courage, not just action, but intelligent action, guided by insight and compassion." Elias smiled faintly. And you have proven that humans are not the only ones capable of change. You have courage in abundance, princess. The galaxy will see it, and so will your mother. It was that evening that the queen summoned them once more. The throne room was vast and quiet, the glow of the artificial light casting long shadows across the ornate floors. Leora and Elias entered together, prepared for scrutiny, yet confident in the choices they had made. Princess Leora, the queen began, her voice carrying centuries of authority and curiosity, I have observed the developments in the outer territories. The reports are remarkable. Tell me, how did you achieve this? Leora bowed, her posture composed. Mother, the settlements were suffering because they lacked protection and guidance. I acted discreetly, providing aid and coordination, ensuring that the people could rebuild and defend themselves. My goal was not recognition, but impact. Lives were at stake and I could not ignore them. The queen's gaze softened, though her eyes remained sharp. You acted without explicit command. You risked the expectations of the court, yet you succeeded where others would have failed. How did you know your approach would work? Elias spoke first, his voice calm and firm. Your Majesty, Princess Leora has exceptional insight. She observes carefully, considers the consequences, and acts with intelligence. Humans survive through calculated decisions under pressure. Her approach mirrored that courage combined with strategy. The results are evident. The queen studied them, her expression unreadable. Centuries of rule had taught her to value wisdom and foresight. Yet the human's presence and the princess's independent actions created a dynamic she had not anticipated. Slowly, realization dawned. This combination of courage, insight, and subtle action was the mark of true leadership. Perhaps it is time, the queen said softly, almost to herself, to acknowledge that leadership is not merely inherited, but also earned through action, wisdom, and courage. You have shown that, princess, and you have done so under observation, without reckless ambition. Leora bowed again, her voice steady. I seek not to challenge the throne, mother, but to fulfill the responsibility of leadership, to act where it is needed, to protect those who cannot protect themselves, and to create lasting impact for the galaxy. The queen inclined her head, a rare smile touching her lips. You have exceeded my expectations, princess, and you have demonstrated a perspective even centuries of rule could not teach. Captain Rowe, your guidance has been valuable. The human perspective, when combined with her insight, has revealed what the Dominion needed but could not see. Elias inclined his head. Thank you, Your Majesty. It has been an honor to assist in guiding the princess toward her full potential. The impact of her actions will be felt far beyond the palace walls. The queen turned her gaze fully to Leora. You have acted wisely, courageously, and with compassion. From this day forward, you will have the freedom to act where it is necessary, guided by the principles of justice and responsibility. The court may resist, yet your results will speak louder than any protocol. Leora's eyes shone with quiet determination. I will act with wisdom and care, mother. I will lead in a way that honors our people, our values, and the galaxy. The queen's expression softened further, and she gestured toward the human. Captain Rowe, you have shown that even the smallest perspective, when applied wisely, can transform a kingdom. The Dominion owes you acknowledgement, though perhaps not yet the full understanding of your role. Elias smiled faintly, his respect for the queen evident. Recognition is not needed, Your Majesty. The outcome is enough. The people are safer, the settlements are thriving, and the ripple of change has begun. That is the reward. In the weeks that followed, the ripple became a tide. Word of Leora's actions spread to neighboring systems. Aid reached planets previously thought beyond help. Raiders were deterred not by brute force, but by strategy, guidance, and intelligence. Local leaders began to follow the example set by the princess, inspired by her courage and insight. Elias continued to provide counsel, but Leora now acted with increasing independence. She made decisions based on observation, intelligence, and compassion. Each action reinforced her growing reputation as a leader capable of balancing wisdom and courage. One day, a messenger arrived at the palace from the outer territories, bearing reports of a settlement that had successfully resisted a coordinated raid, thanks to preparations orchestrated by Leora's guidance. The village leader wrote, "Your efforts have given us hope. Your wisdom has saved our lives and our future. We are forever grateful." Leora read the message aloud to Elias, her voice filled with quiet pride. "This is why we act. This is why courage, wisdom, and compassion matter." Elias nodded. "You see the impact of intelligent action, Princess. You are shaping not just settlements, but the entire perception of leadership across the Dominion. People will follow a leader who acts with insight and courage. That is the lesson humans have always understood." The Queen summoned them once more to the throne room. This time her expression carried approval rather than caution. "Princess Leora," she said, "your actions have exceeded expectations. The results are undeniable. You have shown courage, wisdom, and insight. You have acted where others would hesitate, and the galaxy has begun to recognize your influence. Captain Rowe, your guidance has been invaluable. Together, you have set a new standard for leadership." Leora bowed deeply. "Thank you, Mother. I will continue to act wisely and responsibly for the good of our people and the galaxy." The Queen inclined her head. "Then go forth, Princess. Lead not merely by decree, but by example. Let your courage and wisdom ripple across the Dominion, and let the galaxy see that leadership is more than power. It is action guided by insight and compassion." As the throne room emptied, Elias and Leora remained briefly, looking at one another with mutual respect and understanding. The path ahead was still challenging, yet the foundation had been laid. Courage, insight, and wisdom had begun to reshape the galaxy. In the following months, Leora's leadership became renowned. Settlements thrived, alliances strengthened, and the outer worlds began to trust in the Dominion's guidance. Her influence spread not through fear or force, but through careful, intelligent, and compassionate action. The ripple that began with a single human's counsel had grown into a wave of change, unstoppable and enduring. Elias watched as Leora continued to grow, her confidence and courage expanding with each successful endeavor. The princess had discovered her full potential, and the galaxy had begun to recognize it. One evening, standing on the palace balcony, Leora looked out over the stars, her mind filled with plans and possibilities. Elias joined her, silent but supportive. Together, they had started a movement that would redefine leadership for generations. "You have changed more than the outer territories," Elias said softly. "You've changed the Dominion, and perhaps the galaxy." Leora's eyes reflected the glow of distant stars. And it all began with understanding that courage is not just action, but intelligent action guided by insight and compassion. "Thank you, Elias, for showing me the way." He smiled faintly. "No, Princess. You discovered it yourself. I only guided the path. The true power, the true courage was always yours." For the first time in centuries, the princess felt unburdened by protocol or expectation. She was a leader in her own right, capable of shaping the galaxy with courage, wisdom, and compassion. And as she looked out over the sprawling horizon of stars, she knew that this was only the beginning. The ripple of their actions continued to spread, touching lives across systems, inspiring hope and creating change. And in the quiet of the palace, under the watchful gaze of an immortal queen, Princess Leora had learned the ultimate truth. Leadership was not about power or fear. It was about the courage to act rightly, the wisdom to choose wisely, and the compassion to guide others. Elias placed a hand on her shoulder, a gesture of partnership and trust. "The galaxy will remember this, Princess. Your legacy is already beginning." Leora nodded, her heart steady and resolute. "Then we continue. Not for glory, not for recognition, but for the people, for the galaxy, and for the future we can shape together. And as the stars shimmered above, the ripple of courage, insight, and intelligent action spread further than either of them could imagine. The galaxy had changed, and the story of a human and a princess who dared to act wisely and bravely would echo across generations. The journey was far from over, but the path forward had been illuminated by courage, wisdom, and compassion, the qualities that had begun to reshape not just a kingdom, but an entire galaxy.